YouTube. So if you have been on this platform very long at all, you have probably come across some of the videos where folks are reporting on their ancestry DNA testing results from a company like Ancestry or 23andMe. And I've totally watched those videos and enjoyed them. But I wanted to take an opportunity to think a little bit critically about ancestry and genetic testing. I am going to do my results at the end of the video, so if you want to see that, it will happen, but I would really encourage you to watch this whole thing, not to just skip forward, because I think there's some interesting questions we should be asking about ancestry, genealogy, and these genetic testing companies. So I feel like no matter where you stand on it, your interest in genealogy or ancestry, that if you're a white person, ancestry is complicated. I mean, frankly, if you're anyone, ancestry is complicated, but I feel that my relationship to ancestry as a white person is particularly complicated by some specific things. Like, I feel like there are different phases that you might go through when thinking about ancestry if you're a white person, and particularly if you're interested in anti-racist work and decolonization, etc. A lot of us have this phase of wanting to push aside our ancestors, so basically saying, like, we know as white people that our ancestors were super racist, and we want to separate ourselves from that. Because we're different, we're enlightened, we're modern. But we know that's not really true, right? Like, we don't practice the same forms of racism that our ancestors did, but we are still steeped in a racist society. We still engage in racist behaviors. They're just different in form. As a white Southern person, like, I definitely went through a period of wanting to distance myself from my ancestors. Not so much, I don't think any of my ancestors, or at least not many, if any, were slave owners for socioeconomic reasons, but my family's from Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, and so almost certainly, certainly participated in genocide against the Cherokee people whose land they were occupying. They were certainly occupying native lands, and very likely directly participated in violence against native people in the region. And so, that is like a hard thing to grapple with. It's easy to want to just separate yourself from your ancestors. The other kind of line of thinking that I've seen is, so if one is like kind of wanting to pretend that you exist in a vacuum and distance yourself from your ancestors, another is like some white people get really into genealogy, or really interested in their ancestry. So like, I know when I went to the UK and Ireland when I was a teenager, a lot of the people on the trip with me had Irish ancestry and like wanted to go to the Book of Kells and look it up and learn about their family. I have people in my family who are also really into genealogy, but I think that a lot of white people engage uncritically in genealogy and ancestry work and don't think about the privilege that's involved in knowing where you came from. So there's privilege in knowing being able to know your ancestry, because if your ancestors were enslaved, you probably don't have access to that, because white people actively separated families, got rid of that information, didn't see enslaved people as people, and so therefore weren't keeping records in that way. And if records were kept, then people were considered as property, and so even if there are records, there's a lot bound up in that. If you are of Native ancestry, then you similarly, through the practice of genocide, you might not have information about all of your family. You might be, because of the process of assimilation that is used to try to eradicate a people, information about a Native person's cultural background might have been destroyed. And so there's definitely privilege for white folks in being able to find out where we came from through records, through historical information. There's also kind of a line that I've seen of, this is like a variant on this, which is, I definitely went through this as a teenager and kind of being like, oh, I wish I knew my ancestry. Like, you're so lucky. Like, people who are Jewish or Irish or Italian or whatever and know it, like, oh my God, you're so lucky. Like, I wish I could know my ancestry. Like, my family, as far as I know, went back far enough that there would be no way to know when we came to this country. And I didn't understand that, like, that's actually an immense privilege, that folks who did immigrate, like, they know their ancestry because they were othered, because they were culturally considered other, and because, unlike myself as presumably a Western European white person, like, because my people were seen as the default, we weren't labeled even as white for a long time. Like, we don't claim our identity in the same way because it is not juxtaposed and othered next to the default, because we are the default. So that's something that I didn't really understand. I kind of wrestled with the whole DNA testing thing, because, I mean, for a number of reasons, but I've noticed that a lot of these videos, like, don't really critically engage with the practice of DNA testing and, like, the practice of wanting to know your genealogy or your ancestry. Don't think about, like, why do we have the data that we have for comparison, which isn't the same across all ethnicities, and, like, why do we want to know so badly? I think a lot of white people specifically are looking into these kinds of genetic testing maybe because they want more specificity. Like, they don't want to be just white, they want to be able to claim something. And, like, I think it's important to interrogate that. Also, like, it's dangerous when people who have a lot of privilege use a tiny bit of ancestry. So, find out from one of these sites that they're part Latina or part Black or part Native, which is often what it is, and then use it as a kind of weapon to say, like, oh, well, I'm not just a white person, like, I can't be racist, or, like, in a softer way, like, well, I'm part this, so, like, therefore I can use this as a weapon in conversation. But the fact is, like, blood, even if your blood is part something other than white, like, if you have grown up your whole life as white, and been treated as white, and had the privilege of being white, then that doesn't get you out of accusations of privilege, and you should take those just as seriously as you did before you knew about that part of your ancestry. And it's important that, like, I've also noticed, like, people getting really excited on these videos about being part whatever it is, and not thinking about the histories of sexual violence that very likely were involved in leading to their existence. I think that's something that we should engage with. If we're engaging with our ancestry, to engage in the ugly parts of it, and not just the parts that we're proud of. So I do think, like, at the same time, these sites can be a valuable tool. I think there's a value particularly in people of color and people who are adopted, like, folks who don't have access to this information, particularly, like, the fact that folks whose records don't exist, like, there is this other alternative way to find out about ancestry, can be really powerful, and so I don't want to diminish that, but I do worry about, like, what are these companies doing with the testing data, given the history of scientific abuse and exploitation of marginalized peoples. Like, what does it mean that all these companies now have access to genetic data. So that's a concern. And for me personally, like in deciding to do this, so in my spiritual practice, I want to engage a little more with Ancestry, like try to figure out if there's a relationship to my ancestors or how to approach that, how to incorporate it into my spiritual practice. And so I decided for that reason that I would do a test. I was going to do it privately, but I decided to post this because I did want to like have the opportunity to engage critically and like to do so as a customer of one of these companies. This is not sponsored. I bought the kit from Ancestry, and you know, I think like as consumers we can be critical even while we're consuming, and so that is the background there. So I am gonna take a look at my results now. I haven't seen them yet. I'm guessing that it's going to be 100% or close to 100% Western European. I'm guessing it's going to be a lot UK. Like I said, I don't know very far back because there's not really information far enough like back to Europe. But because of that and because of who came to this country earlier on, I'm guessing it's going to be mostly UK and maybe some French because I have a French last name. So that's my prediction. I will predict 75% UK, 20% French, and 5% of some other Western European. So we'll see how correct that is. Alrighty. So, discover your DNA story. Let's take a look. I like how it says over the chart, it just says AF. I am AF. Alrighty. Your results are up to date. So, the results are... Not what I expected, actually. I mean, still European, don't get me wrong, but only 33% Great Britain. Oh, they do give you a confidence interval, so it says it could be anywhere from 1 to 64%. That's another thing about these tests is like scientific accuracy. 25% Scandinavia. Now that's the surprising one. I didn't actually know. And again, I don't know how accurate these are, but like I wasn't aware of Scandinavian background, so that's a whole quarter. 16% Europe West. So that's where the France is. I mean, they don't tell you specifically, but France, Germany, Belgium, that area. So I think probably French. 12% Ireland, Scotland, Wales. 8% Iberian. That's surprising. That's Spain and Portugal. And so those are the high confidence regions, and then they tell you with lower confidence, 3% Finland, Northwest Russia, and 3% Eastern European. Now, it is interesting. They actually also show you... They also show you where... I wonder how they do this. Where your family's settled. So, they got that right. Southwestern Virginia and Northwestern North Carolina. So there you go. I mean, like I said, it's like... It's not what I expected, but it's European, more or less what I expected. So there you go. Those are my results. If you want to engage in the conversation, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about these services, about doing ancestry work as a white person. I'd be happy to get in a conversation with you. And if you enjoy this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Have a great day.